Hey there, how's it going? Thought I'd do something a bit different today. It's not the best weather. I'm a bit stuck inside. So I thought I'd do a not a reaction video, but a video watching something that I'm interested in, and then just giving my opinion when I watch it. For no particular reason. Just thought I'd be able to self-analyze this afterwards, basically. And so, the first one I've done, so I'm playing around with some software options I've been doing as well, so let's see what happens. So this is, I watched this video quite a long time ago, but I found it quite useful for me. And it was just on my cognitive biases. And it just sort of frames how I kind of think about things. And then probably illustrates it in a reasonable way that allows me to rethink how I think about something, so that I can adapt, change, motivate, encourage, support, progress, really. That's what I think it simulates to. So anyway, that's my rationale behind that. So I've got this one here, 12 cognitive biases. Let's play it.
Description or on the end screen.
Hopefully you can hear this bit.
Number one is anchoring bias. We humans usually
So anchoring bias. He's about to ramble on about what that is. And let's go through anchoring bias. I think this makes sense to use this anchoring bias and to have it is using a piece of information and then comparing it to another piece of information. And then our bias is based on the first piece of information and the difference between this information and that information. Yet we didn't explore maybe the information that we're anchoring on. And so this anchoring bias is a really big one for me. So let's see. Let's play it out.
Completely rely on the first information that we receive, no matter how reliable that piece of information is when we take decisions. The very first information has tremendous effect on our brain. For instance, I want to sell you a car, and you are interested to buy it. Let's say you ask me what the price is, and I tell you $30,000. Now, if you come back a week later and I say I'll sell it to you for $20,000, this seems like a new, very cheap price to you, right? Because your judgment is based on the initial information you got, which was $30,000. You feel like you're getting a great deal, but let's say the first time that you ask me and I say $10,000, and then you come back the next week and I tell you I'm going to sell it to you for $20,000. Now it doesn't look like a very good deal because of the anchoring bias. This is just a very generic use of the anchoring bias, and I don't want a bunch of comments about why a $30,000 car should be sold.
So yeah, I think that's how that's based. And I'm guilty of this all the time. Guilty of this a lot. Especially when you start getting deeper into it. I mean, his example was kind of is very practical and is very relevant to one piece. I'll argue my wife does this all day long. You know, she buys something and she'll tell me she got it on sale. But did you need the fucking thing? you know, you wanted it, you got it, whether it was 30,000, you know. So this is great sales sort of pitches stuff. So we already know that exists. But if we can go further, we go further into that anchoring bias, how we're using that same bias every single day. I'm anchoring some type of bias on some type of to some type of level, and I guess it's just the awareness of that. Aware that I have anchoring bias, because what I notice with some of the biases of anchoring, it can be over a long period of time. So what's interesting to me is the historic thoughts I can have are where I'm anchoring my bias to today, right? So things I thought 20 years ago is where I'm anchoring my bias to today. And that can be, you know, abstractly. So I could, my thoughts on a particular person, say. I have friends that I used to hang out with when I was 30. I'm still anchoring my bias about what they are or not, because to today, that's still the same. And I only need a little bit of intel to decide that they're still the same. And that's probably not true, right? And and my bias is basing it on their physical features, the sounds they're making, or maybe the way they're talking sounds very familiar, from the tones, from the voice, because that's very similar to what it was before, from what I heard. So my bias is already locked into that. So I've now locked them into, you're still the same person, just some differences, right? And I'm doing that more and more with people around me a lot, right? I'm already anchoring all my biases, and not necessarily adjusting my view of this, or this. If we stick to people seem to be the evolving, changing kind of things that they are, just from a physical viewpoint to a mental to a emotional, changing all the time. I'm still anchoring my bias overviewingly and just sticking, this is where you're at, to me. You see? And that's so I find this one fascinating to really get to frame it up and understand that I have that, and working towards, we can use reducing. I think I just work towards being aware of it. It's like I can't stop how I feel. I don't have control over how I feel. What I have control over is what I think about what I feel, or, you know, feeling any emotion based on my thoughts or what it conjures up. So let's say I was a person back in the day who I don't like. So that person, I'm already feeling like I don't like the person. So any confirmation that confirms with my feeling of discomfort, I throw in there as, see, that's why. That validates it, you see. When really that's unfounded, because my emotional state should be neutral, at a neutral stance first, and then based on the information I'm getting now, instead I'm using, with the anchoring, I'm using historic information to generate the feelings I'm having right now about that particular person. Correct? So understanding that's what's going on. I'm not saying I can control it. I'm just saying I can understand that's what's going on. And how do I review it so that my feelings are neutralized enough where my mind is going to the person that whatever event they may have done to me, that today I don't view that event as a thing. And what I've noticed is generally it's just being around that person more with this awareness of I'm having those thoughts instead of having this anger or revenge or hate or all these other things already involved, and confirming my feelings with the actuals, when that person today has done none of that, zero. I can look for one piece that sticks me on the pile of baggage or historic information that I already have and realize I continue to do that. And what's really unfortunate, which is really unfortunate but fortunate now that I realize it, I'm doing that to everybody to some layer and to some degree. I'm using some type of bias, and anchoring bias is one that I find really, really enjoyable to be aware of and to frame and to say, far out, I have that. I do that to my mother. I do that to my wife. I do that at anchoring bias. And don't get me wrong, being aware of it and being a lot of it asserts that my evaluation overview could be more correct, but it's just being so aware of it being there. And in my opinion, it goes from a not a negative concept, but a negative thought pattern into a positive thought pattern. Is that it enables me to work and practice going against, not against my feelings, but going with the feelings I have, and knowing the feelings are there. Or let's say I've got these feelings of discomfort and thing about this particular person, which let's just say this happened 30 years ago, and here is this person today. Of me being able to listen and understand and question and think, not about that stuff, but about today and now, and listen to the things and share and communicate to whatever level, to now go, yeah, and to stop looking for stuff to pile on the baggage of the past, even if some of it is there. So we've got to get through the tone in their voice. I'm already pushing it up, from the mannerisms that they're giving, from the thing, to take all that kind of and say, well, would I be doing this to this stranger over here that's telling me the same story? A stranger or someone that I knew 20 years ago and did something. The same story. Would I be having all these background emotional feelings? And it's probably not. Probably not. And would I be sticking on these biases or these judgments or these emotional extras on there to build it up into my stomach and into my head? Probably not. Because that would be odd. I don't meet a stranger and go, frick it now, after 10 minutes, that person's a problem. Now if I do, that makes sense. Or I meet someone else and I go, man, he's interesting, that was a good conversation. Now if that person had been the same person over here, both outcomes can happen. But if I'm already got this bias for this person already. Both stories could have still had the same outcome of based on my feelings and my emotions that were going on at the time. So yeah. So that's the connection I get, is that having that, I get openness and energy levels being correct now and all as often as you can to understand that I already have these biases as well as even this energy levels of trying to listen and understand and reduce my judgments and things to a degree, let alone having these biases thrown on top as well. I think is what I'm trying to ascertain. So, anchoring bias, really love that one.
For $10,000, but another example is trees. What if I asked you if the tallest tree in the world was higher or lower than 1,200 feet? And if so, how tall? The same effect occurs if I asked you to guess out of thin air instead of giving you an anchor of 1,200 feet. The results are crazy. Number 2, availability heuristic bias. People overestimate the importance of information that they have. Let me give you an example here. Some people think that terrorism is the biggest threat to the United States because that's what they see on TV. The news always talks about it, and because of that, it inflates the danger. But if you look at the real perspectives, televisions cause 55 times more deaths than terrorism. Yes, TVs literally follow people and kill them 55 more times than terrorism. You are more likely to be killed by a cow than a terrorist, according to the Consumer Product Safety Commission. It's more likely to die from a coconut falling on your head.
Yeah, so this one's cool too. Availability heuristic bias. It's an interesting way to form it. What do I call it? I call it like just fear. Fear from information. You can call it the social media thing. You can call it the news information. Information based so what I find with this one is the bias is more that it seems to be more layered, where I'm more likely to find information or listen to information that has this fear element to it, or this what triggers my fears that I already have, which is in a sense the bias. And a lot of the times this goes towards the actions I want to do, or it's back to confirming my bias. And it's all, this is why I'm big on the positive thing, which is all me gaining information to keep me going around in circles of my fears. So I think this one is a huge one, so huge, within information we get given on a daily basis, and now assessing that to react and to confirm decisions that we want to make. So an interesting one is, it's raining right now. It's raining a lot more than usual, and there's floods out. So on the news, it says there's floods in XYZ different places. So my house isn't flooded. My area's not flooded. But I could make decisions based on that information. That there's, and not leave the house and not go anywhere right now, because someone's trampoline is blown over, was one of the news reports. And yes, some streets, the roads were blocked, and water was, right up certain areas. Well, that's happening every single day. Every single day that's happening. Not within my street, but the planet is having that happen every single day. Like it says, with a terrorist attack, that's how we pull that out of the news and put that there. But there's some type of rare event, or there's an event happening every day which results in an outcome. Terrorist kidnap someone, resulting in 2 people dying, 10 people dying, 100 people dying. There's an event of that style happening every moment, all the time, regularly enough that we can capture those bits of information. So these keep resonating and piling on top of thoughts I already have, fears I already have, concerns I already have. We keep piling them on. So I guess a lot of this has been aware that I have that, and use probability statistics and other forms to counter this heuristic bias. I guess other people around us support it or don't support it. So this one here is a real cool one for just using what I would consider more logical thinking and more research-based applications. And you can even use history. You can say, well, there's a flood. It's happened before. We can adapt to the flood. If my house was, if the water was rising right now quite a lot, get a bit concerned, and we'd probably have to move out, go up the road a bit. Then once, the rain's probably not going to last for 40 days and 40 nights, like Noah's Ark, right? Probably not. So, we'll be fine. Well, I'll be fine, I think. So let's get that out the door. And keep moving. So yeah, that's a cool one though.
And killing you than a terrorist attack. Thank you, Gary Vaynerchuk, for that one. Even the police that are hired to protect you from terrorists, it's estimated that you are 130 times more likely to be killed by the police than by a terrorist. That's because people do not make their decision based on facts and statistics, but usually they make it on news and stories and stuff they hear from other people. It's way scarier to die from a terrorist attack than a falling coconut, and because of this, usually the news won't cover it because there's not much money in it. Number 3 is the bandwagon effect. People do or believe in something not because they actually do believe it, but because that's what the rest of the world believes in. In other words,
like this one, the old bandwagon. Bandwagon effect. I guess that goes, another one that just goes within the social construct, your social contracts and social circles. And it's just difficult when you've got those thoughts, it's difficult to combat, because confirmation with other humans, imagine that. So if my fears are doubled when my wife has the same fears and the same way of categorizing something, so now we've doubled it, because that confirms everything I speak to her, confirms what I've already confirmed. Now I've doubled it. And then if my children can triple or quadruple it, even though the outcome was the opposite, I can keep going, and because I'm going to keep looking for confirmation of my bias, which bandwagoning, really difficult to shake. But I think the bandwagon one with the social construct does kind of speak to our evolutionary development. I'd argue that humans evolved to this point benefiting from bandwagoning to a large extent. You know, you probably benefited in a war from bandwagoning. You know, even if I was influencing 1,000 people, our species probably benefited at that point to go to war or to kill a tribe up the road. If I'm not the attacker, I'm the defender. If I'm not prepared to defend, then I die. So bandwagoning in that kind of concept is when once I die, my lineage is gone. So now that doesn't continue. If we get it into that level of human history, of martial law style. So it makes sense that joining, bandwagoning, for the most part, for at least pieces of that, movement, you could, within that construct, you could argue you were better off. So if you had 5 generations of that style, where you're very well protected within the bandwagoning, you've got these real solid defense mechanisms that your group has built, and it keeps protecting the group just in a survival sense of living longer from the structures of it. Even with individually, life is worse as a, depending on what piece of this human, if you want to go racism, or if you want to go hierarchies, if you're talking hierarchies, at least you lived and you were a servant. You were still alive. You could be a slave being treated. So a servant could have slaves, and slaves could be treated from whatever way we want to describe it. They're surviving versus the other guys is that just chop them in half. Correct? These ones keep living. Even if you're forced to do that, you're still, as a servant, you're still alive. And the hierarchy system appears in history to have been going for at least since human tribes. A tribe seems to naturally evolve a hierarchy. So hierarchies would seem to be prevalent, probably even within the animals. So any animal has a hierarchy, and I'm talking within a species. So you can have a lone animal that still has a need to propagate and to reproduce and to copy itself, or you have a group of wolves or animals that increased their chances to propagate, even if what you were doing within the structure or the system of that process is what particular animal you were. A wildebeest is there, it's evolved into that piece because it survived. It's survived. Now there's hundreds of thousands of them that have all done the same thing within their thing. They know the herd gets clipped every year. They know when it breeds that their calf will get eaten. They know if it gets injured, it gets eaten. They know. They don't know it, but that's what will happen. Whereas humans have seemed to have found bandwagoning seems to have played an advantageous role in survival. I'd suggest. So it makes sense that bandwagoning, even from right now, I don't appear to need other humans to survive, even though I earn money and stuff like that of that nature. So abstractly we can say, but as far as it would make sense that genetically coded in me, bandwagoning would be preferred, would be logically advantageous for me to follow, I think.
It's following the rest without thinking. If you've ever heard someone say, well, if your friends jump off a bridge, would you? Then that someone is accusing you of the bandwagon effect. It happens a lot with us. I mean, a lot of people vote for a certain candidate in the election because he's the most popular, or because they want to be part of the majority. It happens a lot in the stock market too. If someone starts buying a stock because they think it's going to rise, then a lot of other people are going to start picking the stock as well. It can also happen during meetings. If everyone agrees on something, you are more likely to agree with them on that object. In management, the opposite of this is called groupthink, and it's something companies try very hard to deter. Because if 9 out of 10 people agree on something, but the last person doesn't and won't speak up, it could squelch a great idea. Number 4 is choice supportive bias. So people have the tendency to defend themselves because it was their choice. Just because I made the choice, it must be right. For example, let's say a person buys an Apple product. Let's say it's a MacBook instead of a Windows PC. Well, he's more likely to ignore the downsides or the faults of the Apple computer while pointing out the downsides of the PC. He is more likely to notice the advantages of the Apple computer, not the Windows computer. Why would...
Yeah, so this one here is very similar, right? Is by just adding my decisions and constantly putting supporting arguments towards it. And I would think that would make sense to do. It's just not realizing that I'm doing it. I mean, when I make a decision to do this or buy that or have that, when someone asks me, it's hard to give a balanced argument towards something that I honestly think benefits me, even though, well, why wouldn't I? To me, that's just back to the circumstance you're in. I think it's just important to be aware that that's there. I notice that with choices I make with the colour of something or the car I have. It sort of fits within what I prefer. What's interesting is even if I go to other people's places and I look at theirs and go, yeah, prefer my choice. Yeah, I wouldn't do that. I'd do it the way I've done it. See that? Nah, I'd rather have it the way I've got it. Definitely a bias there. So that's a real cool one to sort of try to understand. Why is that? Why is it my choices are perceived to me being the better choice, or being the choice, when really it's not. It's just the choice I prefer to make. But why is it that I'm continuing to enjoy this? I guess it's back to that. I have really good feelings about it too. Correct. So let's opposite that and go, the colours I've painted the house, and the house I've bought, or what I'm living in, let's say the feelings I get is just sickly. I have horrible feelings about it all the time. I look at it and I just don't like it. Well, how am I to get over that? You see? It's like that concept of free will. I don't seem to have the free will. I don't have the free will to paint those doors pink and enjoy it the same that I enjoy them now. The view I've got outside there, I enjoy the view. Now paint it another colour. In particular, colour that I don't really like. I'm not saying I don't like every colour, but let's just go with a total different look. And I can't. I don't seem to have the free will to go, and they'll say, no, I like that. No, I do like it. See what I'm saying? It's just, maybe for the odd thing, but in general, I'm going to go with, see, the way this place looked before, I was fine with. Correct? Fine. But I didn't sit there going, fuck, I hate this fucking lounge, I hate this, I hate that. I just was in it. I avoided them. I think which is important to suggest here, is that I avoided my true, honest feelings about those subjects. So I didn't go there. Now, as I embrace those, I think see here, we're soundboarding this out now. As I embraced those thoughts of, okay, we're going to redo this lounge. Now what are we going to do? And I go, okay, once I get over the psychological hurdles of the change. So for me, money was one of them. If I'm not going to spend, because it's not going to be free, if I'm not willing to spend the money to change the colour, then avoid, if you are feeling like, ugh, this looks ugly, that bit looks ugly, you work through that and accept it based on, I'm not doing anything about it. I'm not going to do anything about it, so be okay with it. It's a room, it's livable, there's levels, but if we just go, the room's fine, it all functions, but it's not what I would prefer had I built it, or had I had the choice when it was painted at that time. Now, to change it now comes with a cost, with resources, with ability, with skills. Now, as it were, how much do I want it to happen? But take money out. That doesn't avoid the feelings and the emotions that I'm already getting when I look at it, positive or negatively. I look around me now and I'm honestly suggesting that it's, even the word better doesn't make sense, but it just is. Now, could it be even better? Possibly, probably. Is it enough for me to constructually push into? Maybe. Which is fascinating, right? So choice supportive bias is really important from a, not just as a bias, that I have bias towards the choices I'm making, but looking at it, what about the choices I'm not making? Right? So you can actually have a bias towards something purely built on one piece. So my bias was built, my choice supportive saying, I'm fine with how this whole looks. It was purely built on a bias I had towards what can I do about it, or what am I willing to spend 5,000, if I did a quote and it's going to cost me, for what I would like to have in here, $10,000. If I don't have the money, or I don't want to spend that sort of money, that makes me sicker. How's that? If that realization and that negative feeling of debt, of more money towards that, outweighs the negative feeling of me sitting in this room. Correct? So, in a weird way, my feelings were this far. I could propagate on top of that, but to borrow $100,000 to make the color of this room a different color and have a different shaped furniture, that feeling was too much. And within that choice supportive bias, I layered on top of there that I was happy with the choices I'd already made. Because remember, I'd already chosen the couch that was in here, I'd already chosen this, I put this in here. So I'd already built a layer of choice supportive biases within the construct, but only based on, it was based on the choice bias, based on budget, based on circumstances, based on situation, some other things, right? Still all built on choice supportive biases. So what's interesting is one thing, it takes time to have one thing taken out of that, or emotionally work through that. Okay, I won't go into debt now. I've got the money, say. Now I've got the money. If you say, well, now you've got the money, so now I'm going to change the colour. That means you never liked the colour. You say, no, I like the colour. Then now you've got money. Why are you spending money on changing the colour? Because I never liked the colour, right? That makes more sense. Or it was suppressed enough to not be at that point, not being brought to my attention, right? So this chair starts collapsing and this is broken off, and I keep using it. I chose this chair. It was like, it's a great chair, but the arm's broken. Yeah, but it's a great chair. Look at the arm bit. It doesn't make too much difference. Okay. So the choice would be to get a new chair. It's broken. No, I enjoy the chair. Chair's still alright. Is that on the same basis? My choice supportive bias is that strong? To now go, don't worry about it? Or is that different? I think it's tied together. Because there's another reason why I'm not, because this is broken. May not be, look, it's not fallen on the ground where you can't sit on it. But parts of it are broken off. It's like I've got a jersey and the sleeve is now ripped. I still wear the jersey. Okay. I like, you know, I'm attached to it, and it's from a choice bias that I have, comfort, emotional, joined to it. Now I get the new jersey, put that on, I'm okay. It's not ripped anymore. So yeah, it's ended at that. I think that's not too bad. Just